Okay, so I've been sort of keeping a lot of this private. Um, it doesn't even really matter, I guess, to even talk about this stuff um, on here, other than the fact that I have family and I have friends that I haven't talked to in a while. That this is just the easiest way to go about it. So, um, start kind of at the beginning. A couple years back, as you guys all know, I had worked for National Auto for maybe something like 10 years, and their doors closed. Ended up now I work for Hunter Peterbilt, and with that came the first sort of opportunity that I had in a very long time to kind of get myself checked out, because with a better job comes things like benefits and health insurance and so on. So the deal was uh, that now that I have that, I'm going to go get the rundown, get a physical, blood pressures, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, walking into it, I just naturally assumed, I'm a bigger guy. I don't exactly have the greatest habits. I don't think I have particularly terrible habits, but they're not the greatest. And I'm man enough to admit that. Um, so I go in, I meet my doctor, orders blood work, obviously, all that kind of stuff. And I had higher blood pressure for that checkup. And he was like, "We should do a sleep study too." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. We can whatever you think, whatever you think. I get it. I'm almost 40. These are things that need to happen." So we go down that road. I get or I get the blood work done, and it comes back aces, which is surprising. Surprised the hell out of me. Surprised my own family in some cases. Um, but good news, you know what I mean? The only thing I had that was really wrong was I had a vitamin D deficiency, which, if you live in the Northeast, is not uncommon. So they prescribed me that, whatever. Doctor recommends, uh, you know, getting me on lisinopril, which is a blood pressure medication. So I've been on that now for, I want to say, well, since late September or October, every day, pretty much religiously. And I have felt better taking the vitamin D. I will admit the craziest thing with that is my mood has been a lot better. I don't know if it's attributed, I guess it'd be attributed to better blood flow with the lisinopril, and then also with the vitamin D. The sun gives you that, and we don't get a lot of sun, and I work indoors, and I've just felt genuinely my mood has been better. I know some of you have been with me through some times that are not the greatest, and it's a really weird flip. Um, anyway, that's not what this video is about. Um, Fast forward to now, whatever, around the same time I do a sleep study. And if you've ever done one of those, it is extremely uncomfortable. And I don't mean like it hurts or anything like that, but it's like you want to get a normal night's sleep. But here's this apparatus that you put on your chest with tubes up your nose and a thing on your finger that clamps, and good, I go to sleep. And it's like there is literally I don't have no idea how they ever expect somebody to get a decent sleep. And by the way, you can't take anything like melatonin or any kind of sleep aids or whatever if that's your jam. Um, so I did that. I think I got one of the worst nights of sleep I can remember, in my mind. Um, Sent it off, and that's the end of it. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, I start getting results back, and I have an appointment with a pulmonologist. And he basically tells me, he's like, "Well, so here's what's going on. Um, have you had high blood pressure your whole life?" And I was like, "Not that I'm aware of. I've never really felt like I have high blood pressure. I mean, you know, I haven't had a lot of doctor's visits in the last 10 years. Recently, I did with my new doctor, and he said it was pretty high. Didn't never really cross my mind. Maybe I'm just getting older, and it's hereditary too. That's actually what my doctor had said, that the blood pressure can even be a hereditary sort of thing. So, um, he goes, "Well, here's kind of seems to be what's happening." Now, I'm going to preface by saying that when I heard this it sounds like a get out of jail free card, and almost as if, and this maybe I'm just the type of person that I just downgrade everything when it comes to me because I don't generally put myself first when it comes to my well-being, and meaning I'd rather focus my energies on my family, make sure Rebecca's good, make sure the kid is good, everyone's fed, everyone's warm, and like those are the things that have always mattered to me. I'll wear holy jeans if it means that they, have new shoes, like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And it's just the way I am. It's the way I was brought up. I get it from my mother. It's a thing. So he goes, well, you have sleep apnea. I'm like, well, that's not really that surprising. My wife's told me for years that, she hears me in my sleep, that I sometimes stop, I guess, breathing for a couple of seconds or whatever. And she's got to kind of nudge me. He goes, well, that's not good. I was like, okay. He goes, during your sleep study, how much sleep did you get? I was like, maybe 6 hours. It wasn't really great because of the machine. He goes, well, in that 6 hours, you had 27 instances of your sleep apnea kicking in, meaning 27 different times over the course of a 6 hour period. Now do the math. I think it's one every 7 minutes or something like that. Something like that. It's been a while, but you interrupted your sleep pattern, your REM cycle, and you were disturbed. So you're not getting a good night's sleep, thus leading to high blood pressure. I'm like, okay, well, that's because I'm heavy. He goes, well, there's a little bit more to it. And this is where the get out of jail free card comes in. He says to me, in the top of everyone's stomach, there is the gland that controls your metabolism and your appetite. I don't remember what it's called, but, this is what he tells me. He goes, that gland, every single time one of these instances happens, your body has to kind of restart. That even in your sleep, everyone always thinks that their metabolism just goes to nothing. It doesn't go to nothing. It does go slower because you're not active, but it's still working. Every time that instance would take place, that gland would panic, essentially, and stop. So any of the metabolism, anything that's working to break down the food that maybe I had for dinner, or even maybe later in the day, like lunch, late snacks, something like that, it's got to reboot more or less and do it again. And it had to do that 27 times. He's like, your body is working against you. I said, oh. He goes, right. He goes, now the sleep apnea is a tribute to this, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle where you're a bigger guy, you have sleep apnea, you struggle losing weight because your body doesn't break down the food overnight, and then you become bigger and heavier, and and it just circles and circles and circles. And it kind of started making a lot of sense because I have curbed my eating habits over the last 15 years or so. I'm not going to pretend like I can't indulge if I really want to, but by and large, I tend to have what I feel is a relatively normal. I'm not going to say it's over the top healthy, but I think it's a normal diet, and it's a diet that people that I know that are seemingly in better shape than me have as well. And people that are in better shape than me have worse diets too. And it's always kind of bugged me because I don't understand. I'm not saying that it's a question of why don't I lose weight? It's a question of why am I as big as I am? And then I don't I don't necessarily anyway. These are all things that I've thought about for years, and it kind of just lended itself to an explanation. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "That's what it is." And I was like, "So why is my blood work good?" And he literally looks at me in this like German accent. And he goes, "Because you have good genes, like me." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "But that's eventually going to run out." He goes, "You're good. You have good genes, and that's why you're as healthy as you are. We have to take care of the sleep apnea, and it's going to improve your life tenfold. You will get 10 more years on it, and we have to get rid of this gland. That's really ultimately what's hurting you." And I said, "Oh, okay." So we start down the road of he's like, "I want you to go talk to a bariatric doctor, make an appointment, see him in like a week. Just talk to them and see what your thoughts are, and see how that all goes." I'm like, "All right." So make the appointment, go talk to him, and the first um, visit is always the strangest because I'll just be totally honest. I'm 5'10", 300 pounds. I'm a stockier guy for sure, but I'd say half, at least half the physicians or nurses or whoever or specialists that I've seen since this journey. I hate using that word, but since this whole thing, um, they've always consistently sort of said the same thing, that you don't really seem like you belong in this chair. And what they mean by that is usually it's people that are much bigger, obviously unhealthy, with all due respect, are there for bariatric surgery. But I think what it also kind of means, at least the way I took it, was when you sit literally in their office, the chair can fit two people, but it's for one person. That's the size difference. And my body, as stocky as I am, would only take up about a little over a third of the seat. Like that's what they're expecting to walk in those doors, is somebody that's almost 2/3 bigger than I am. So it's a bit of an eye opener. Um, the actual bariatric staff that I dealt with, that were my people, meaning my surgeon and my nurse's aide, they were fantastic people. Aides, I should say. Um, they're fantastic people. They totally get it. They understood the diagnosis by my pulmonologist, and they have treated me with an amount of respect that is frankly surprising at first. But I don't think I'm alone in this. This is not something that's uncommon in terms of getting the sleeve surgery without it being a literally physical reason. Um, Having said that, there is I don't want to call it alarming, but there is a fair amount of people that are in the medical field that, you walk in and I'll give you an example. I had one guy, it was one time, this was the worst one to be fair. And he was a PA, and the guy didn't look at my chart at all. At all. And the reason I know that is because there were like very obvious things pertaining to my history and like my meds that I had been on, that I'm on now, and stuff like that, that were like, he just didn't know anything about it, and he was just throwing fucking shit at the wall hoping that something made sense, kind of like a fortune teller. Like that's actually what it felt like. They're just like, they're taking clues, context clues or whatever, and they're just kind of like hoping that it sticks. And this is the ugliest part about the medical system, in my opinion, but that's a whole other subject that we could maybe get into one day. But that's what I took from that. And they do the whole, like, the assumption and the narrative always is like, well, you're gonna have to cut back on soda, you're gonna have to work on that. And I'm like, I drink 16 ounces of coffee in the morning and I switch to water after that. If I have soda, it's on a family pizza night and we buy enough for the meal, and then we don't have it again until the next time we have a meal like that. Well, you're gonna have to work on your fast food intake. You gotta stop those drive-throughs. I am too cheap to justify going to fast food places every day. I know people that do that, and they're thinner than I am. Got nothing for you. It was degrading, and it was a little eye-opening too. And I would just be honest. I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, and you don't have to believe me because, maybe I'm lying, I guess, but I don't eat a lot of fast food. I admitted wholeheartedly. I admit wholeheartedly that my family and I will have, and it's less now because things are so expensive, but we would have a family takeout night. It was typically on a Saturday because that was just our weekend night. And it was like the end of the week, beginning of the week, and it was like that was the takeout night. And every other night of the week, it was always cooking something at home. What that is different every night, but generally speaking, at least it's made at home. And I've always had the attitude that homemade food is always better food, healthier meaning too. But anyway, that's sort of the big eye opener that I saw from this whole experience, is the amount of the assumption that everyone's there because they're basically a fat fuck, for less lack of a better term. Um, and that's just not the case with me, from what I understand. I can tell you that when the pulmonologist gave me that, so anyway, sorry. So saw the bariatric surgeon. We come to terms with all this. I'm sent home with a lot of paperwork, and they want me to think it over and give them a call. So I end up speaking to my doctor. I think it might have been a pulmonologist, but anyway, came to the decision that I'm gonna go down this road and see what comes of it. And again, same thing, like test after test after test. I just kept getting good marks. I mean, the big one that really was a relief was I got an upper GI. Yeah, upper GI, and everything was clear. No clouding. There's, oh no, GI is sorry. GI is, I'm just learning this stuff. GI was stomach stuff, but still nothing there. Did learn that I had a hernia. Didn't know about that. Um, but nothing cancerous, none of that kind of stuff. They do the lung scan pre-surgery, which is standard. Again, totally clear there. I was very happy about that. Like, it's literally just this phenomenon that happens as I sleep, and coupled with the fact that I'm a bigger guy, thus feeling I'm a bigger eater. And I got to tell you, a lot of us have it. Um, and what I mean by that is, and I make this joke, but I really do feel, I mean, maybe I don't think it's the case for me now, to be honest with you, but there was a lot of years where it was that, we come from people my age, we come from the food pyramid generation, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you guys recall, but back in the early 90s, we were told to have 7 to 11 servings of grain a day. Can you imagine that now? That is but Rebecca and I were talking about this like yesterday. It's literally the opposite. Everything I'm being told dietary wise right now, going into the surgery and what will be eventually my normal leaving the surgery, is exactly the opposite of the food pyramid. Take the food pyramid, flip it upside down. That is the opposite, in terms of like where the direction it goes. But all the major stuff is protein, and then you get your fruits and vegetables, and then at the very tippy top is like carbs and stuff like that. And you even eat it on your plate in that order. You gotta nail your protein first, and then the veggies, and then if you want to take, like, you're not really even supposed to have stuff like carbs. But let's just say you're having like a dinner, and I'm not going to deprive Rebecca and Abby of having what they want. So let's say there's potatoes, and I want to taste the potatoes. I can do that. I can have like 2 scoops just to satisfy that craving a little bit, but that's like the end of it. And I have to try to not make that, not even try, I shouldn't say it like that, but just ensure that that is the last thing on my mind, is like that there's priorities in your consumption. And anyway, but that's what I always tell people, is that I come from the food pyramid generation, and these habits that just form, and we were taught to be this way. And I have a nutritionist in all this, and she 100% agreed. She was like, I get it. And actually, the nutritionist, and then they set you up with a counselor, because there's stuff up here that you got to work on too, to make sure you're clear minded for all this kind of stuff. And I brought that up to him, and same thing, same exact thing. He was just like, oh yeah, he goes, that was we had bad science 30 years ago. He's like, we've definitely figured some things out. Unfortunately, there's basically a generation of people that just got bad information. I mean, we were taught it in school. We were taught it in school, and the food pyramid was the better idea. Before that, it was the 4 food groups or whatever it was, and it was the square, and it was like dairy, meat, fruits and vegetables were one category, and then grains were over here. And it was still kind of like askew and weird, and that was kind of its own thing. But we were raised to believe like you're supposed to be eating a exorbitant amount of grain. Come to find out now, it's like, no, 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 no. Carbs are they're essential, but they are bottom of the. And I say this now because it's not like this is new information as of today. Like, people know this, but when you grow up with that, anyway, you build habits, and that's kind of where I ended up now. So this video ended up being a hell of a lot longer than I really wanted it to be. But the reason I made it again is because I don't know who cares that I'm even getting this procedure. It's not dangerous. It's very standard by today's. It's very standard by today's practices, and I'm going to make it. I'm not even nervous about it, honestly. Dr. Taleo seems very competent. He's been doing this for like almost 30 years, from what I understand. He's very good at it. I guess it's more to do with, and I'm going to breeze through this. I think I might end up doing another video, kind of getting into this other end of it. And again, I don't even know if this matters, but if anyone ever wants to talk about this situation, if you ever feel a little nervous about this, I mean, this is not something I ever really thought that it was going to come across my plate, for lack of a better term. Um, but I will tell you that getting into it and really understanding it, and getting that it's not just a surgery for fat people. Like, um, there's a medical reason. Not that that wouldn't be a medical reason, but meaning like I think there's a stigma that surrounds surgeries like this, and I kind of attribute it to like this. It's like this surgery. I don't know the history of it, but it's kind of like they super glue, liquid band-aid was super glue, or rather super glue was liquid band-aid before it was super glue, meaning they had this stuff in the war and it was intended to heal wounds, and like, oh, by the way, you can also like reglue two things together and they're permanently affixed. You know what I mean? There's like two intentions for one thing. It's a happy accident. I was like sort of looking at this like that, like maybe this was always sort of the intended use of this procedure, and it's just one of those things that maybe over the course of time there have been instances where people have used it for whatever or not. I don't know. I'm just this is a bunch of stuff that have just like rattled through my brain. And if you made it this far, thanks, I guess. Um, Sorry if I'm just kind of rambling. There's just things I wanted to get off my chest. But if anybody has ever felt like, um, if they come across this sort of similar situation, or they're not really sure about, you know, this procedure or whatever, reach out, and don't necessarily just even reach out to me. Just talk to anybody. Talk to somebody who would never even need it. Like just talk to people, because you don't have to go through stuff like this alone. I mean, you shouldn't. No one should. It is personal, but it's also important to cycle through feelings and all that kind of stuff, and it matters. It really really matters. I spent a lot of years in my life dealing with things, trying to deal with things on my own, and it is not healthy. It's just not. You become self-deprecating, and you implode a lot of times, and inadvertently end up hurting people around you. Um, it's not good. It's not good. So, anyway, yeah. So that's the gist of it. February 16th is my date, my surgery date. It's right around the corner. Right now, I'm celebrating my final day of normal eating for ever, or at least not normal eating. I'm definitely kind of going for it a little bit, but just starting tomorrow, I do my liquid diet, and that's its own thing. That's a big change. It's basically protein shakes and broth for like the next 10 days after that until surgery, and then it'll be another liquid diet for about 2 weeks, and then I slowly get to incorporate more and more solid, you know, denser. I'll use the word denser foods over the course of that time. Like you literally start with like ice chips, and then as soon as you can handle ice chips, that's when you're allowed to leave the hospital, and then you're just doing back the liquid and protein shakes again. And then you get 2 weeks of that, and the doctor says you're good. Then you go to like emulsified foods and whatever. And I've already kind of like working in my brain like, how can I make baby food taste better? Oh, I'll just add paprika to it. That sounds good. Stuff like that. Um, yeah. If this helps anybody, if this is, if you watch the whole thing, I appreciate it. I thank you for dealing with my kind of bag of kittens approach to, this type of surgery. Um, if you don't buy anything of what I'm selling, that's fine too. I don't blame you. I really didn't, you know, believe any of it either. But, when a pulmonologist is sitting there and he's telling you, you're big, yeah, but it might not be your fault. That's a lot to grasp onto. I spent a lot of years of my life um, being, I don't want to say mocked, but let's just say there was heavy criticisms around my appearance and size, from myself mostly, and just in life. I don't blame people. It is what it is. Human nature is human nature, and jokes are thrown around. I just learned to live with it. I always tell people you make the joke before they can, and then it can't hurt you. That's really what it boils down to. So, um, but we'll see. It'll be different. Come summertime, I make my trip down to Virginia Beach to see my brother and his family, and we get like our little family reunion thing, and I'll probably look a little different. That's all it is. So anyway, I'll probably do a few more of these. I kind of want to, I guess, sort of catalog this experience, and not a cheesy, you know, um, encouraging speakers sort of way, or what's the word? What do they call those people? I can't remember. You know what I mean, though. Those fucking douchebags. I don't want to be like that. Real. It's the real. It's the real side of this kind of stuff. What someone's going through, what they're thinking. At least what I'm thinking. And if it helps somebody, or if, you're in a situation where you feel like you need to maybe go down this path, or your doctor's suggesting it, or whatever, or you feel like something's the biggest thing more than anything else, and I'll leave with this because I know it is really getting long. If you ever are in a situation, and it doesn't necessarily be like what I'm going through, but you're like, I'm trying, I'm working at it, and just something doesn't click, just go to the doctor. Just go do it. Like, because I avoided it for a lot of years. And it was money. I'm not going to pretend like that wasn't it, but it was also like, you just got to, sometimes you just got to face the facts. Something's not right. Why is it that no matter what I do, and I've tried, I have tried to drop pounds over the years, and it's always the same scenario. It's you get to a certain point, and yeah, you lose that initial 10 pounds, maybe even 15, and you just hit the wall. And I know they always say, well, you plateau. Yeah, you do plateau, but at a certain point of basically starving yourself in the process, your quality of life comes into play too. And I've always teetered that scale where it's like, well, I'm a lot happier when I'm eating a normal diet than essentially dropping myself to eight or 1,000 calories a day, which is not a lot. And I've done that. I have done that on more than one occasion, and it's miserable. It's freaking miserable. And maybe if I had more of a strong willpower, I could have never needed to go this direction. Maybe I could have. Maybe if I would have done 6 months at 1,000 calories a day, maybe I could have dropped the pounds, and maybe I could have found myself not needing the surgery. Maybe. I just don't have that willpower. I just don't. I just don't. I couldn't do it. I was miserable. I would be angry all the time and take it out on people. It was very snarky and shitty, and it's just not a good place to be. So I refuse. This is the way it's going to have to happen. So anyway, I love you guys. I appreciate you watching me ramble. Hopefully, it does something for you. Like I said, maybe I'll be doing more of these. I don't know when. I don't really have an intention for it. Uh, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.